maybe it's about time we went to legally binding agreements in all these meetings, especially from the Conference of Parties. Now we're going to COP29, which will be in Azerbaijan. But now, you wanted to add something on that. Yes.
I just wanted to say that we should not take for granted the multilateralism spirit that we're enjoying now, because nations need to talk. Let me just give you a reason why I speak like that as a young expert in this space. There's a reason why the Kyoto Protocol did not succeed or make huge strides as the Paris Agreement is taking. And it's because the main objective of the Kyoto Protocol required Annex 1 countries only to be the ones to pay for pollution, whereby the developing countries didn't play a key role. And when nations saw this, Russian Federation pulled out, US Congress said we cannot be held accountable because we are just polluting, because anything that has the word protocol must be discussed at the US Senate and agreed upon. Yet then we found Canada pulling out. So it reached a point whereby the only partner of Africa was European Union. And that's how we saw the failure of Kyoto Protocol. But now with the Paris Agreement, yes, it's not legally binding, but the approach used of at least every person has the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities, being respected and appreciating. Even a tiny country like Eswatini has a small part that it can play in the maintenance of restoration of the biodiversity. So we have to respect them. So what I'll say is the approach that we are making noise and saying that we really need legally binding. But we find that when we go the legally binding way, now countries will disintegrate into their own cocoons and start doing their own thing. But we should not take for granted the spirit of multilateralism that we're enjoying now with the NDCs and the Paris Agreement. Yes.
Robert.
Yeah.
We have had these conversations on just transition. That means we need to go green. That comes with e-mobility. We need to go solar. Now, when we talk about those two, I'll take those two examples, and it is a question of infrastructure that is available. As Kenya right now, we can all agree in Africa that we don't have infrastructure for e-mobility and that we still have a long way to go. So even as we're talking about just transition with regard to just going e-mobility, that's difficult. But we are mining resources to manufacture batteries here in Africa, specifically the Congo. Why are we not seeing a conversation around setting up these facilities in Africa? Because they are being mined here anyway, so that we are able to grow these economies.
The thought of having these mining industries in Africa is there. But the thing is, we are still listening to the people who are doing them, who are telling us, no, you don't have to do it. We'll do it for you. Yeah, we'll do it for you. So you tell us, how do we pay? You know, how do you exchange the money? So they'd rather come and mine and rather let Africans do it because they know the benefit of it. That's why their economy is high. That's why they're telling us, you know, they're doing the pollution, and yet we are being told, you know, those places we've mined, kindly go and plant trees, and you know, then we are going to sell for you carbon. Yeah, so that is the conversation that most African countries are afraid of to talk about. Yes.
Ngesa.
Yes.
You are a carbon markets expert.
Yes.
When you talk about carbon credits, it's a big word. It's confusing everyone as we speak about carbon markets. What is carbon markets? How are we going to benefit from carbon markets? Because someone would argue that carbon markets is, say, Kenya, grow 15 billion trees, have the carbon sink, right? You're able to clean the environment. But those who are polluting are continuing to pollute, but paying you to clean up. Is that the case? Make us understand today.
Thank you so much. Literally, carbon market means if there's a value that is created for carbon, the unit called carbon, and this unit is normally is normally equivalent of 1 ton of carbon for it to be sold up on the market. And the main reason there's a value created is because countries are saying, like for instance, Kenya it promised to cut its emission by 2030 to 32% in the updated national determined contribution. So there's like a value that was created because we cannot now continue meeting and yet we've promised to do that. So that value, how we sell it, is we invite countries or parties of private sector under Article 6.2 is cooperative for countries, and under Article 6.4 is for private sector and other players. And there's a market that has regulations. Carbon market is an opportunity for countries, for companies that have resources, and they want to continue doing their businesses as usual, and at the same time create at least a value or create some finances to fund countries to maintain their natural resources. The main reason I'm using natural resources of biodiversity is because a research by one of the companies called Silvera last year showed that the 98% of the projects of carbon markets have gone in nature-based solutions. I know the opposers of carbon markets oppose because of the artificial ways of artificial carbon sequestrations and all those things, which are not so. That's only 2%. But the truth is that carbon markets is a way, we should look at it as a way of raising climate finance. And people don't want to hear that. The people who oppose it say it's a pollution permit. And I agree, it's a pollution permit. And the main reason is this. You go to a company like the Shell or BP, they owe their shareholders fidelity. They have to pay them dividend. And however what happened, even if Jesus comes today, they cannot shut their business tomorrow. That one we have to agree, because it's a profit-making conglomerate. And for them to continue making profits, they have to drastically start reducing on their emissions. Research shows that companies that have engaged in the carbon markets have been decarbonizing slowly than companies that have opposed engaging in carbon markets. So what carbon markets has done to the environment, there are two benefits. Apart from raising the climate finance, there's also an option whereby it is funding the maintenance of biodiversity and nature. Because projects that are mostly invested in, like for instance, if God forbid that our biggest water tower, Mau water sector, it's there. It's not apart from the ecosystem benefits that we are getting. If we can get an extra income and we are told maintain it for 30 years, isn't that a good thing for Kenya? Isn't that something that makes Kenya maintain, and even there's Kenya signs a concession with that. I know people argue that we are losing our land and everything, but for 30 years we are being told maintain this ecosystem and we are going to pay you. Don't you think that's a positive thing?
Lucky.
Yes.
That is an expert speaking. Now let me talk to you as well, because I know you understand this area. Someone else would argue that we are permitting continuous destruction of environment because we are engaging in carbon markets. But even while at that, as Africa, do we have structures in place on carbon policies for us to be able to engage in this business? Or is it just a word that does exist to confuse us while others continue emitting?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and thank you very, very much for that question. For too long, the issue of carbon market or carbon trading has become so controversial that people think and have various and different opinions, and you won't blame them. One of the reasons why there's also an increase in call for climate justice is because maybe Africa wasn't really ready in engaging in all conversations from all sides. So the global north went ahead with ideologies and then came back proposing them in as text in these conversations. Do we have structures in place? Even the NDCs that we have in African countries, as at COP27, the executive secretary of the UNEA said only less than 50 countries had revised and submitted their NDCs. And if you look at the numbers of those countries who have done that, 80% of them are outside of Africa. There is that issue of capacity. So if you have African countries still struggling to revise their NDCs, then how much more the issue of frameworks that enhance carbon market conversations? I'll give you an example with Nigeria. Upon return from when February, yes, by first week of February, the Nigerian government held a workshop to cost our NDCs. what it will cost us to implement both our conditional and unconditional commitment. We are looking around $236 billion to implement the target in our NDCs.
How much in Naira?
We wouldn't want to go there. Yeah, so we don't even have that money right now to do that, even though we have a 25% unconditional commitment, and then we've gone further to now look at the provisions of Article 6. So the government of Nigeria is currently trying to assess the opportunities in Article 6, and which is where you have the carbon market conversations. This is Nigerian government doing this with support from partners that are outside of the continent. How many other African countries can you count to have frameworks in place that would then allow them assess the opportunity? Because whether you like it or not, we need to raise climate finance to implement our NDCs. We've seen the implications of the $100 billion Paris Agreement, how far it had gone. So we're beginning to look inwards to do that. But you can only do that when you have frameworks in place. Frameworks that you understand yourself, not frameworks developed by consultants and you don't understand the terms. So we're looking at that, and I think other African countries, and we have, just like you referenced, the Nairobi Declaration from the African Climate Summit. Some of this context have been captured, but with the clear statement that there's still that need for capacity building, and it comes in form of having frameworks in place. Let's hope that with the call for climate justice and with having robust conversations on the table, we will start seeing African countries putting frameworks in place that would allow them to assess some of these opportunities that are in the space.
Now I just want us to finally go through moving forward. What should be done and what must be done? Because climate change is here with us. Drought, floods, cyclones in Africa are things that you experience every other new day. Therefore, what must be done in terms of having indigenous communities, the youth, women, everybody on the table on matters to do with climate change moving forward?
I think there's something called inclusion, which is very key right now, because you need the community down there. You need those people living with disability. You need the youth. You need the women who are muchly affected. You need the community as a whole for you to get, for the ideas, for you to come up with a reasonable or a policy or an act that is going to be inclusive. Because without their ideas, without them, then they'll be like, okay, this was a boardroom thing, so they never consulted us. So let's see. So implementation will be very minimal, or there won't be any implementation, because the community down there who are doing it, who are the most affected, were not consulted in one way or the other. So we need inclusivity, and that is very key.
Yes.
One of the main reasons why I joined the carbon market conversation is not to support or oppose. It's because our leaders have already bypassed us. They're already setting up policies and laws already without consulting us and everything. The only thing the role we get to play is public participation. And somebody must speak for our communities. By understanding the sector, I can't step in, because if you look at the number of foreign companies that have set shop in Kenya, just for carbon markets participation, it's alarming. And why? Because I've seen something that they know the potential benefits that it is going to bring. Because if a carbon market today was taken to the OGX today, I can assure you the person who's going to do the assessment, the project setup, is going to be a consultant from the global north. I want it to be me. I want it to be my brother from Kenya or from Africa doing it for their own, because they understand the needs of their communities. Let us discuss it for us. So to oppose it and say it's a blanket negativity or a pollution permit, it's wrong. Let's engage in the conversation of carbon markets first before we say it's wrong. And let's just put it so well. We are even struggling to get the 100 billion. If we get the potential to raise money to fund our NDCs, why not be open to the idea? Not that we receive it wholly, but let's engage in the conversation first before we oppose it. Yes.
Lucky.
Yes, moving forward, interesting question. It's high time we start building narratives that are African centered. And there is also that need to promote intergenerational equity. Whether you like it or not, you pass the baton. You don't want to pass the baton to foreign consultants, but you have to pass the baton to young Africans who understand the issues and how they affect Africa as a continent. I am here today on your show, not because I studied climate justice in school. I've had the opportunity to be part of one of Africa's innovative initiatives, which is the Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice by the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. And as a matter of fact, we currently have the application for the 4th cohort ongoing. I want to believe you have viewers of young people all over the continent of Africa and beyond. I think I would encourage as many young people as possible to seize the opportunity of applying for the summer school. These are fully funded sports that tend to build the capacity of young people to understand the African narrative of what it is, identifying what forced solutions are, identifying what conversations we need to be. So moving forward, and just like you have said, we need to bring in faith leaders. We need to bring in indigenous people. We need to bring in even young people from the private sector to be at the table. And this is what the Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice even present to us. So moving forward, let's promote initiative that is of African origin. The summer school is part of it. I also know Mike, my friend, and also Robert. They also have platforms where young people can engage. We can only amplify the voice of Africa through this platform that are Africa centered, and I think we can get the climate justice that we want. So for the summer school, it starts by June 23rd up until I think the 7th of July here in Nairobi. So let's see what happens in UNEA, and then also let's use that to also build a conversation around the global geopolitics of climate change.
Gentlemen, on this show today, let us just describe what climate change means to all of us. I will start. I'll make it easier for myself.
Yes.
Climate change, it is a question of life and death. What are we doing? To you?
To me, climate change is all about humanity. I think basically humanity. That's it for me.
Climate change is a question of morality. We cannot deny its existence.
Climate change is an issue of trust. We've had 28 conversations for 28 years, over 30 years. How far have we gone? It's an issue of trust. Let's ask our conscience. Thank you.
How do we get that trust, briefly?
How do we get that trust? When we have open conversations. The conversations are not open yet.
And you?
By being open to new innovative ideas like carbon markets.
It is about people.
For me, it's about agendas, structures. It's about Africa, the economic aspect of it. That's it.
Climate change is a problem that continues to bedevil the world over. It is a question of life and death. It is about gaining trust in addressing issues to do with climate change. It is about the people. It is about life on the place we call home. Therefore, it bestows upon all of us to join in on these conversations to make sure that we play our part, that we plant our trees, that we stop drilling, that we have honest conversations, that even when you're doing green transition, that we're going justice on all these conversations, that we do them on an honest platform, on a platform that engages everyone on the table to make sure that we win, that we make the place we call home a better place. Women, people with disability, children.